Imagine sitting on the most comfortable couch in a perfectly quiet room with nothing on your to-do list, yet your chest feels like it is about to explode. You are safe, warm, and completely out of harm's way, but your brain is screaming that you are in danger. It is the silent, frustrating paradox that millions of people face every single day. We have built a world where we no longer have to run from wild predators, yet we have somehow turned our own minds into the ultimate hunter, and ourselves into the prey. Why is it that the moment you finally get a second to breathe, the moment the chaos of the day quietens down, your mind refuses to let you rest? Why does doing absolutely nothing feel like an active threat to your survival? To understand this, we have to look at the life of someone who seems to have it all together, a person we will call Thomas. To his colleagues, Thomas is a machine. He is the guy who is always on, the one who handles every crisis with a calm, stoic smile, and the person everyone relies on when things go wrong.
He runs a successful business, maintains a highly disciplined routine, and never seems to miss a beat. But behind the closed doors of his beautifully decorated apartment, Thomas is hiding an exhausting secret. He has completely forgotten how to turn off. His entire life is a masterpiece of optimization, a nonstop pursuit of efficiency, yet his inner world is a chaotic storm of low-level anxiety that never quite settles.
Every night, the same agonizing ritual plays out. Thomas lies down in his bed. The room is cool, set to 18 degrees Celsius, and pitch black. He has followed every single piece of advice science has to offer. He cut off caffeine at 2 in the afternoon because it blocks adenosine, the chemical that builds up to make us sleepy, slashing deep sleep by up to 30% if consumed late. He followed his 60-minute pre-sleep shutdown, avoiding screens, turning on only dim, warm lights, and journaling to dump his thoughts onto paper, trying to shift his brain waves from the awake beta state into calm alpha and theta waves. He even calculated his sleep in precise 90-minute cycles, aiming to wake up right after his 4th cycle to get 6 hours of efficient rest. He tells himself that sleep is not a weakness, but a performance tool, and he is determined to master it. But as the digital clock on his nightstand ticks closer to 3 in the morning, Thomas is still wide awake. His eyes are burning, his chest feels heavy, and his mind is racing through 100 different scenarios, analyzing problems that do not even exist yet.
He feels a deep, frustrating sense of failure. He has optimized every single variable, so why is his body refusing to cooperate? Why is his brain still firing as if he is standing on a battlefield? The harder he tries to force himself to relax, the more elusive rest becomes. He is caught in a trap where the very act of trying to relax has become another task on his to-do list, another performance metric he is failing to meet.
As the sun begins to rise, Thomas finally drifts into a light, fragmented sleep, only to wake up a few hours later with heavy brain fog and a lingering sense of dread. But instead of slowing down, Thomas does what he always does when he feels overwhelmed. He doubles down on control. He washes his face with freezing cold water and forces himself through a high-intensity routine to spike his dopamine and noradrenaline levels, desperate to clear the heavy sleep inertia clouding his brain. If he cannot control his sleep, he will control his body. This is where Thomas's second sanctuary comes into play, the gym. But Thomas does not work out like most people. He does not go to classes, he does not join recreational leagues, and he absolutely does not have a training partner. He is the guy you see in the corner of the gym with his headphones firmly in, his hood pulled up, and his eyes locked straight ahead. Nobody talks to him, and he prefers it that way. He shows up at the exact same time every single day, follows his program without a single deviation, and moves from exercise to exercise with a cold, mechanical precision. To the casual observer, Thomas might look arrogant, standoffish, or antisocial. But that is a lazy reading of a much deeper psychological reality.
Thomas is not avoiding people because he dislikes them. He is avoiding them because he is protecting something precious. He is protecting his peace. To understand why Thomas is so fiercely independent, you have to look back much further than his gym routine. You have to look at how he learned to navigate the world.
As a child, Thomas learned early on that the people who were supposed to support him were not always reliable. Perhaps it was a parent who made promises they could not keep, or teammates who let him down when the pressure was on. Somewhere deep in his developmental years, a fundamental rule was written into his brain: depending on other people creates unacceptable risk. He discovered that the only truly consistent person in his life was himself. This lesson did not stay in his childhood. It followed him into adulthood, and it followed him directly into his physical training. For someone like Thomas, having a training partner who cancels at the last minute is not just a minor inconvenience. It is a painful confirmation of a truth he already knows to be absolute. Do not build your consistency around someone else, because eventually, people will let you down. To protect himself from that disappointment, he cut the variable out of the equation entirely. No partners, no dependencies, no expectations. Just him, the iron, and his own willpower.
Psychologists call this having a high internal locus of control, a deep-seated belief that your outcomes are entirely determined by your own actions, not by luck or other people. It is a powerful survival strategy that has allowed Thomas to build incredible consistency. But it is also a strategy that comes with a massive hidden cost.
When Thomas trains alone, every single detail is under his absolute control. He chooses the playlist, he decides the exact pace of his representatives, and he controls the duration of his rest periods. The gym is one of the very few places in his entire life where he can completely eliminate unpredictability. This physical routine serves a vital psychological function. It is his primary tool for emotional and mental regulation. The repetitive, self-paced movement activates his brain's default mode network, allowing him to process the stresses of the day, think through complex business problems, and quietly reconnect with himself. Without this daily ritual, he feels as though his entire life would start to unravel. Lately, Thomas has added a new tool to his physical arsenal: the jump rope. He bought a weighted licorice rope, having read about how fighters and elite athletes use it to build explosive stamina, coordination, and full body conditioning. At first, the coordination was difficult, requiring his hands, arms, and feet to align in perfect rhythm. But as he practiced, he fell in love with it. The jump rope requires such intense focus that it leaves absolutely no room for his mind to wander.
The swing of the rope must be precisely timed with the jump, and because of the length of the cord, he must maintain sharp spatial awareness to avoid hitting anything around him. For 10 or 15 minutes, the rhythmic sound of the rope clicking against the rubber floor becomes a form of meditation.
He is forced to be completely present in the moment, jumping on the balls of his feet, arms close to his body, hands at waist level, clearing the spinning vinyl by just a fraction of an inch. His cardiovascular system works at peak efficiency, his lymphatic system drains from the constant up and down movement, and the sheer focus of the skill takes his mind entirely away from his daily worries. It is an addictive, playful release. But the moment the rope stops spinning and the headphones come off, the silence rushes back in. And with the silence comes the realization that the peace he found was only temporary. The low-level hypervigilance that follows him everywhere is still waiting for him in the locker room. Because beneath his discipline, Thomas is quietly anxious. When he is in social settings, he feels as though he is constantly being observed, measured, and judged. Even in the gym, if someone stands too close or watches his form, his internal cortisol levels spike, triggering a stress response that ruins his recovery. He carries a constant, exhausting internal performance review in his head, evaluating every action, every word, and every breath.
Thomas is trapped in a loop of his own making. His relentless need for control is the very thing that makes him successful, yet it is also the thing that makes it impossible for him to relax. He has built a life where everything is optimized, but he has left no room for vulnerability.
He believes that letting his guard down, even for a moment, means losing control, and losing control means opening himself up to disappointment. He does not realize that his greatest strength, his absolute self-reliance, has slowly and quietly become his greatest vulnerability. One Tuesday evening, the fragile scaffolding of Thomas's highly optimized life collapsed. It did not happen with a dramatic business failure, but in the quietest, most mundane way possible. Thomas was in his apartment, trying to squeeze in a late-night jump rope session to burn off the residual stress of a 14-hour workday. He stepped onto his training mat, gripped his weighted licorice rope, and began to jump. For a few minutes, the steady click-clack of the vinyl cord against the floor offered its usual therapeutic comfort. He focused on his breathing, trying to force his mind into the present. But his mind refused to cooperate. As he attempted a transition into a faster boxer skip, his focus wavered. He thought about a critical client presentation scheduled for the next morning. In that microsecond of distraction, his rhythm broke. The heavy vinyl rope caught the tip of his shoe.
Before he could react, his ankle rolled outward with a sickening pop. The momentum threw him sideways, and he crashed heavily onto the hardwood floor, sending a metal lamp clattering against the wall. There was only silence, followed by a wave of white-hot, agonizing pain radiating from his left leg. Thomas gasped, clutching his ankle as a cold sweat broke out across his forehead.
He tried to stand, but the moment he put even a fraction of weight on his foot, his knee buckled, and he collapsed back. His phone was sitting on the kitchen counter, 15 feet away. A sprained ankle is a minor injury. But for Thomas, sitting alone on his floor in the dark, unable to reach his phone, it felt like the end of the world. His mind immediately went into overdrive, spinning terrifying scenarios of helplessness. He was entirely alone, and for the first time in his adult life, his absolute self-reliance was completely useless. He could not power through this with sheer willpower. He lay there for hours, staring at the ceiling, listening to the distant hum of traffic. The pain in his ankle was intense, but the psychological pain of his helplessness was far worse. He felt a deep, suffocating sense of shame. He had spent years building an impenetrable fortress of independence, believing that as long as he controlled every variable, he would be safe. Yet here he was, defeated by a piece of plastic jump rope, unable to even cross his own living room.
The next morning, when Thomas did not show up for the presentation, his team was deeply alarmed. Thomas was never late, let alone absent. After several unanswered calls, a junior colleague named Marcus decided to check on him. Fearing a medical emergency, Marcus convinced the building manager to open the apartment door. Marcus found Thomas sitting on the floor, propped up against the sofa, his ankle swollen and heavily discolored.
Thomas looked exhausted, pale, and deeply embarrassed. He braced himself for the judgment, the pity, and the loss of respect he was certain would follow. He expected Marcus to see him as weak, as someone who had failed to keep his life together. But Marcus did not look at him with pity or condescension. Instead, his eyes filled with genuine concern. Marcus knelt down, assessed the injury, and wrapped some ice in a towel. Without asking questions, he helped Thomas up, let him lean on his shoulder, and carefully guided him to the clinic. During the drive, Thomas sat in the passenger seat, his heart racing, waiting for the catch. He expected Marcus to complain about the inconvenience, or to make a comment about how Thomas's injury had disrupted their schedule. But the silence in the car was surprisingly peaceful. Marcus simply played a quiet, low-key music playlist. He helped him register, waited with him in the lobby for 2 hours, and even went to the pharmacy to pick up his prescribed pain medication and crutches.
When they finally returned, Marcus helped him onto the couch, placed a glass of water and the medication on the coffee table, and turned to leave. Before he walked out the door, Marcus looked back and said, "Don't worry about the presentation, Thomas. We handled it. Just rest. You've been carrying the whole team on your back for 3 years.
It's okay to let us carry you for a few weeks." As the door clicked shut, Thomas sat in the quiet apartment, stunned. The catastrophe he had spent his entire life running from, the terrifying act of relying on another person, had actually happened. And the world had not ended. Marcus had not let him down. He had not used Thomas's weakness as leverage, nor had he judged him. He had simply showed up, offered a shoulder, and kept him safe. For the first time in as long as he could remember, the tight, defensive knot in Thomas's chest began to loosen. A strange, unfamiliar warmth washed over him, and as he lay back on his pillows, his eyes grew heavy. Without setting an alarm, without calculating his 90-minute sleep cycles, and without checking the temperature of the room, Thomas fell into a deep, dreamless sleep. This was the turning point that Thomas so desperately needed, and it reveals a profound psychological truth about why so many of us struggle to relax. We tend to treat relaxation as a skill to be mastered, a habit to be tracked, or a state to be achieved through rigorous effort.
We buy sleep trackers, download meditation apps, and force ourselves through complex evening routines, turning rest into just another arena of performance. But relaxation is not a goal you can chase. The human brain is wired with 2 primary nervous systems. The sympathetic nervous system, which drives our fight-or-flight survival response, and the parasympathetic nervous system, which governs our rest and digest recovery state.
Here is the crucial catch. You cannot consciously force your parasympathetic nervous system to turn on. It is an automatic response that is triggered by only one thing: a deep, genuine perception of safety. When you try to force yourself to relax, your brain interprets that very effort as a form of struggle. It sees your rigid routines, your frustration with your insomnia, and your relentless pursuit of control as signs that you are under threat. By treating rest as a battle to be won, you are inadvertently signaling to your amygdala that you are in danger, keeping your body flooded with cortisol and adrenaline. For Thomas, his chronic self-reliance was not just a personality trait. It was a highly sophisticated survival strategy designed to keep him safe from disappointment. But by cutting out all external variables and refusing to depend on anyone else, he had created an internal environment of perpetual hypervigilance. He was always on guard because he believed that if he slipped up even once, everything would fall apart. His body could not relax because his mind believed that letting his guard down was a threat to his survival.
True relaxation only became possible when he was forced to surrender control, to accept his own limitations, and to realize that he was safe even when he was weak. In the weeks that followed, Thomas's recovery was slow, but his internal transformation was rapid. He had to use crutches to get around, which meant he had to ask his colleagues for help with simple tasks like carrying coffee or moving files.
Each time he asked, he felt a brief flash of his old anxiety, but each time, the warmth and willingness of his team disarmed him. He began to see that his hyper-independence had actually been a barrier to deep, meaningful relationships. By never showing weakness, he had never allowed anyone to truly connect with him. When his ankle finally healed, Thomas returned to the gym, but his workouts felt different. He still trained alone most days, protecting his quiet time for mental and emotional regulation, but he no longer wore his hood up like a shield. He began to make eye contact with the other regulars, offering a friendly nod or a brief wave. He even started a conversation with a guy who had been training near him for months, realizing that sharing a space did not have to mean losing control of his peace. He still jumps rope, but he no longer treats it as a metric of his physical dominance. He jumps because he loves the rhythm, the flow, and the playful lightness it brings to his body.
And on the nights when sleep does not come easily, he no longer panics. He no longer forces himself through a rigid checklist of sleep hacks. Instead, he simply turns on a soft, warm light, picks up a book, and gently reminds himself that his value is not determined by his productivity. He has finally learned that the ultimate form of control is knowing when to let go.
We live in a world that constantly tells us to do more, be more, and optimize everything. But the secret to true rest is not found in a better routine or a more expensive sleep tracker. It is found in the quiet, courageous act of surrendering our need for absolute control. It is found in accepting that we are beautifully, fragilely human, and that we do not have to carry the weight of the world entirely on our own. Because it is only when we finally dare to let our guard down that we can truly, deeply breathe. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to Mind in Minutes for more psychology stories like this. Thank you for watching.